Can you provide an introduction to who you are here at ASU?
My name is Cady Coleman. I'm an astronaut, retired from NASA, and now looking for ways to use the fact that I'm somebody that has been to space twice on the space shuttle. I lived for almost 6 months up on the space station, and I was really proud of that work, but I'm even more proud of the work that I think it allows me to do now that I am home on Earth, so to speak. And I am really thrilled to be the University Explorer, or the Global Explorer, here at Arizona State University.
What was your pathway to leadership?
Becoming a leader actually was something that surprised me a little bit, and it took me a long time to realize that my leadership just might be different than that I had seen. I grew up in the military. I became military after being ROTC in college. And so I was used to a certain kind of definition of leadership that implied that someone at the top looks down and says, this is how things should be. Where I find myself someone who's very aware of what a situation looks like and who's having a little trouble and has questions they haven't asked yet, and who's running off confident but maybe doesn't have all their facts, all those kinds of things. And it took actually being on a mission with the first woman commander for the space shuttle, Colonel Eileen Collins, to realize that there's a lot of different leadership styles. And mine doesn't have to be like hers. It doesn't have to be sort of more standard military. It can just be realizing that what I bring to the situation is important, and it's up to me to speak up when I realize I've got valuable things to contribute, and to help other people realize when I've got some things to say.
So, what made you passionate about equity?
I spent most of my life, I would say, just trying to do the things that I dreamed of. I really loved chemistry in high school, and I studied chemistry in college and graduate school, and I really loved that. And it didn't occur to me that there weren't so many women in that field, but I did notice in things like graduate school that when we would have a Friday afternoon seminar every week, and when they would have a woman professor come, it just made me, I just liked it. And I wanted to know who she was and what she was about. And it took a while to realize that I had chosen some fields where there really weren't a lot of women. And when I applied for the astronaut program, I will say it never occurred to me, well, gee, what if there's not a lot of people like me? I just felt like, I really wanted to do that job. And I liked the fact that they needed people trained like I was in science and material science, and yet there was this adventure and also a sort of ability to work in a group. And I never actually thought that they would pick me. And actually, I will say the most important thing for me to share with you is that it never occurred to me to be an astronaut until I was in college and I sat in an auditorium where the Women's Alumni Association had a lecture by Dr. Sally Ride. She's the first American woman astronaut. And I had seen, the pictures of the Mercury 7. I grew up with a dad who worked in diving. Exploration was really real to me, but the fact that I could be an explorer was not until that day with Sally Ride. And I realized that here she was, a scientist who got to do all these other things. And it's not that I thought, oh, if she can do that, I could do that. But I thought, if she can do that, maybe I can try. Maybe I belong there too. And I feel strongly that it very much takes seeing someone like you to understand that that's a place that you might belong. I mean, some people don't need that. I think they're actually very few. When they wake up in, maybe as a kid, maybe as an adult, and they realize, I'm supposed to be doing this, and they just go do it. But those people are few. And most of us need to kind of take a survey, look around, see some things, and try them on for size. And for me, it was important to see someone that sort of looked and felt just like me. So that was a really pivotal time for me.
So now you're talking to your younger self. What are some things that you would say to your younger self?
I actually love to go out and speak to groups, young and old. But I find that when I'm looking at people that are younger than me, especially when they're at a point in their lives where you know they could still completely change their minds about who they are. I mean, I actually think people can do that their whole lives. But, when I'm looking at a group of women in college and they're going into a field that is maybe, not an astonishing number of women in there. And I feel actually really compelled to share some of the stories of what it felt like to be me. Because when I look back, I will say it was actually kind of hard to be me. And there's things that I did as an astronaut at NASA. For example, learning how to be a spacewalker, where I am actually the smallest person on the space station to ever be qualified and be on the team to be a spacewalker up on the space station. Now, in the space shuttle world, we had women doing that, and we had small people doing that. But when we moved to the space station, we eliminated the small spacesuits. And that meant that somebody like me who's kind of smaller had a harder time. And what I found was that people didn't really expect me to do that. And it wasn't that they thought, well, we're going to have a meeting and we're not going to invite her. But because it never occurred to them that I should be on that team, I wasn't invited to meetings often. And I'm good at doing my homework, and I would hear about, oh, we're going to have a talk about this. It's about spacewalking. And I would think, well, I want to be a spacewalker, and I think I could do that. And so I would literally invite myself to those meetings. And I look forward to the time that everyone on your team can see everything about you. But until then, I think that women and minorities are going to continue to surprise people and actually have to have this sort of inner fortitude where they know that they belong somewhere, and you actually just have to find your own way to open up your space there and find a way to let yourself in. And then I'll say step 2 of that is a way to make that space even wider so that others can be there with you.
How do you see your current role in supporting equity?
I'm very proud of my background as a scientist, as an astronaut, and as a person who did things that people didn't really expect me to. And sometimes, I'll tell you, it's kind of a hard bridge to cross to decide, I think I'm going to tell a whole bunch of stories about me. Because, or to think about writing a book where you say, and then I grew up, and then it was this, because I never feel like, I'm such a perfect example. But I've come to realize that everyone's stories are valuable, because one of my stories will resonate with someone who needs just that extra bit of, oh, I do belong there. Because sometimes when things are hard, I tend to think, well, maybe that means I'm not supposed to do that. I mean, if they don't invite me to something, maybe I'm not supposed to be there. There's a part of me that really hears that. And I think that happens with other people as well. And so all of us telling our stories, even though it feels a little egotistical, it feels a little bit bragging to really say, I did this and it was really hard and I'm proud of it. And actually, most importantly, I think it's important to share the kind of help that you got. As a person that learned how to do spacewalking, the most help I got came from some of the women that came before me, who said, now that they've eliminated those smaller spacesuits that fit us, to be in the medium spacesuit, as soon as that happens to you, you call me and we're going to figure this out. And realizing that they had the confidence that I could do that, that was important to me. But realize you may have to ask for that help. Sometimes it's volunteered. Sometimes it's someone who's just plain old shy. Sometimes it's somebody like me that just thinks, well, I don't want to go to something and, just tell people things all the time. I don't want to just be the person talking all the time. And yet, everyone's stories are really valuable. So my lesson for the future and for diversity and inclusion is that we all have stories and we need to tell them.
Thanks. Do you have any final remarks that you'd like to make?
I think there's some advice that we give to students or people who are just starting out, because we feel like, and I think they get a lot of encouragement, And then there's a stage where, you have made that professional grade and you are in your career. And I think that that is a place, when you're in that first, and until you're really so solid, nobody can knock you off that pedestal. I think that's actually a particularly hard place to be, in that you're going to be in there with a lot of different kinds of people who have, agenda is a strong word, but it's more, you don't know what the forces are that control those people. And yet there you are, on the faculty somewhere, and you can find that somebody is helpful, you can find somebody that is not helpful, you can find somebody that, basically doesn't seem to know that you exist and doesn't really talk to you. And all of those people have stories. And all of them actually can be useful and actually maybe just comforting and really nice to have in your community. And unfortunately, it's probably going to be up to you to find ways to connect with them. And I think realizing that, the person that's quiet just might be a quiet person, has nothing to do with you. And you might have to take that first step of saying, hey, this is me, and I wondered if we could have coffee, or just going to them, even though you don't really need life or death help solving a problem, but saying, I'm doing this, and I wondered what you thought of it. I value your opinion. Every one of the people around you, there's a different way to blend with them. And some people are easy. I think of, when I was back at NASA, my friend Nicole Stott, fellow astronaut, kid the same age, we both knew that, we're not going to answer each other's emails between the hours of like 5 and 9, because we're busy, right, with our kids. Whereas, somebody else, I feel like they might be judging, in terms of when I'm doing work and when I'm not. But with Nicole, that connecting is easy. But it's the people that it's harder with. And it may not feel fair, but for you to really own that place that you are, I say you want to find out what you can get from all of them. And the way to do that is to be, I think, brave yourself about who you are and open to other people and who they are, whether they're brave enough to tell you or not. You may have to go and kind of help them come to you. But realize that you're going to have to be more brave and open than really seems fair. But I wish you really the best of luck. We need you.